Welcome back to Overtime here on WOTM. As promised earlier, we have Mark Everett Kelly in the house. First off, Mark, I know we're going to talk a lot of baseball here, and a lot of Atlanta Braves fans a little bit worried maybe about the team after kind of an up and down start. It's been a bit of a roller coaster. They have now an interesting series going on with the New York Yankees over in the Bronx, and you're kind of the neck of the woods, so to speak. You're closer than most of your average Alabama fans are to that organization. First off, what is your assessment of where the Braves are right now and this series here against the Yanks?
I'll tell you a story. Very first interleague game. Remember, the Yankees and Braves played in the 1996 World Series. Mm-hmm. So the first time that there was an interleague game between those two was in July of 1996,
right.
7 at Yankee Stadium. And Kenny Rogers wound up coming out of the bullpen. Tom Glavine started for Atlanta, and the Yankees wound up winning 1-0 in 10 innings. That was the last Yankee game I went to back in 1997. Mm-hmm. So I have a love for watching baseball, but also these two teams and the way they played in the 1996 World Series to me was a classic World Series because the Braves were so dominant, and they were so dominant those first two games. But since then, after leaving New York and outscoring them 16-1 in those first two games, the Yankees have kind of had their way with Atlanta.
That's right.
And last night was just part of that. Today we're seeing the Yankees, they're just not hitting this year, but neither is anybody. And that's, I think, what most Braves fans are worried about.
Right.
Now, what you got to understand is the Yankees represent pretty much what domination is in Major League Baseball, especially since the wild card. They have the most playoff appearances. They've won the most World Series. Entering today, they were 6-10, which is the worst record in the American League. They are last in the American League in batting average and runs and RBIs. The last time they finished last in all three of those categories was 1990 when they lost 95 games. So the Yankees really aren't doing well either. So if you're a Braves fan, I know my girlfriend's worried. She said, they're not going to make the playoffs this year. Give me a break. We're not even into May yet, and there's already panicking. But I think the Braves will be fine. A lot of, like Kirkshin was saying on the broadcast today, there's a lot of irregularities. We're going to see some of that a little bit later. Some of the guys you expect to do well are not doing well.
Right.
Some of the guys you've never heard of are doing awesome, and pitchers are dominating right now. So Atlanta, with the way they're struggling, inconsistent offense. But last night, too, they lost with this wild pitcher by Nate Jones. Yankees had bases loaded, and Atlanta basically gave them the game.
Right.
Clint Frazier, who hadn't had an RBI in 66 plate appearances, they get him to pop up, and then they get out of the inning where it looks like they're only going to be trailing 2-1, then they walk in another run.
Right.
So essentially Atlanta, and they've had a lot of those games this year, especially against the Marlins in extra innings with that dumb rule where you put a guy on second base in extra innings. That cost them a couple games. There's a lot of things that are happening right now that will be fixed,
right?
Especially with Inciarte's out with an injury. You have Pache's out with an injury. You have Newcomb is out with an injury. Acuna has been out a couple days. So they're not at full speed. Their pitching staff still needs to come back to normal. You've seen Ian Anderson pitching great tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Max Fried will get back on it. Charlie Morton, I thought, pitched very well yesterday. And he went 6 innings. The more the starters go deeper, the less that'll take off of their bullpen. And then you'll see them kind of get back. National League, nobody's doing really well right now. Phillies are awful. The Mets, the only reason why they're doing well is because they haven't played as many games. The Marlins are struggling. Everybody else is under 500. So I wouldn't really worry that much if I was Atlanta.
Exactly. Let's take a look at the head-to-head series since that 1996 season that you talked about earlier. And you mentioned that the Yankees have kind of had their way with the Braves, and it looks like it's basically from an offensive perspective specifically, it's kind of an all the way across the board and around the horn with these two clubs.
Yeah, and this includes obviously the postseason too. The only 2 games it doesn't include is those 7-inning games last year that the Braves won in Atlanta because I'm sorry, I don't count 7-inning games. It's not real baseball. So I didn't include them in this. And you've seen that's just the domination that the Braves Yankees have over the Braves. It's kind of the opposite with the team in Queens that I've come to not appreciate in my lifetime. The Braves, anytime they've had to beat the Mets, they have done so, and done so easily, and done so where they really stick it and rub it in. But the Yankees kind of the opposite. The Yankees have had a couple games where they've scored 20 runs one game against Atlanta, and especially in Atlanta that we're going to see coming up here. So at Yankee Stadium, Braves have a little more of a chance, but definitely down in Atlanta, starting with Game 3 of the 1996 World Series, the Braves have really struggled at home against the Yankees. So it's kind of like a tale of two cities where they're playing on a home or a road.
Exactly. Let's take a look at those home-road splits there between these two squads. And it's one of those situations where you would think that there might be home field advantage. And I think this year, obviously, a little bit different because of the coronavirus pandemic. So you won't be able to just wins and losses, won't be able to tell the full story of it. However, you did get a pretty good sample size here looking back.
Yeah, well, I think when the Yankees went down to Atlanta in Game 3 of the 1996 series, I remember everybody thinking this was over.
Right.
Yankees, they were absolutely dominated in the first two games by Smoltz and Maddox. Maddox, Game 2 was so easy. He had like 15 balls right back to the pitcher's mound. And then here's Glavine in Game 3 against David Cone. Yankees come back and win. Then Game 4, I thought, turned the whole series around with that home run that Leverich hit. That really should never have been. Waller should have never threw him a breaking ball, and he hit it over the left field wall. And then that Game 5, which John Smoltz says was the best game he pitched. This is a guy who won 16 postseason games, and it is, to me, I love John Smoltz, always did. And that was the best game he pitched. The game they lost 1-0. The other thing I'll remember about that series is John Wetland just got smacked around.
Right.
The Braves smacked him around, but they couldn't score off him. They were hitting line drives everywhere. He got named series MVP, and his saves were like line drives to the warning track.
Right.
So that, to me, I thought the Braves should have gotten to him because he was very hittable. But 2-17 at home at Turner Field, at Fulton County Stadium, because that was where it was in 1996. And then 13-15 at Yankee Stadium, so they're much better at Yankee Stadium. They've scored more runs per game. And I think they're a little more comfortable because after they lost those 3 games in the middle of that series, and then in 1999, the Yankees just dominated them. So maybe, I think something really happened mentally to the Braves facing the Yankees. And the Yankees do that to a lot of teams, including the Mets.
Exactly. And like I said, the Yankees, number one, have done that to a lot of teams. But let's take a look at this next thing that you highlighted. The Yankees actually joined another one of the kind of titans of the American League East, the Boston Red Sox. Take a look at the worst win percentages by any team since that 1994 season against different opponents. And there you have the kind of two titans of the sport, 1-2 as far as the teams that the Braves struggle with.
Yeah, and everybody in the National League, the Braves have been over 500 against. And the Dodgers have been pretty good.
Right.
I mean, Dodgers have made the postseason like 8 straight years and won a World Series last year. The Braves had them 3-1 in the NLCS last year. The Dodgers have beaten them 3 times in the playoffs since 2013. So I just think it's just a testament to how good Atlanta is against the National League. And the Yankees, it's not a bad thing that they are losing to the Yankees. A lot of teams are. The Red Sox are another team that's won World Series in the last 10 years, 15 years. And the Orioles, I wouldn't expect. The Orioles were better in the early mid-'90s when they had Cal Ripken and some of those guys. But you just see how, to me, this shows more how the Braves really dominate against the National League. They're not under 500 against any National League team since 1994. That's amazing. It really is. And the Yankees, a lot of teams struggle like that against them, but 30%, the Yankees seem to have the Braves number, starting with Game 3 of the 96 World Series.
I think it'll be interesting to keep an eye on the Braves, Dodgers, as they move forward. I mean, I know there's only a 7-game split between them now. We'll see what it is like at the end of this year, and I know that most Braves fans are hoping that those two teams will probably be able to meet in the NL Championship Series with a berth to the World Series on the line there. We'll check out all those series with the Atlanta Braves. Meanwhile, coming up next here on Overtime, we'll talk more Major League Baseball, some of the takeaways here in the first month of the season, and some surprises in Major League Baseball. We'll also talk Jacksonville State, the Talladega race, and so much more. Join us for that next here.